With nothing but the material world to go on.
But isn't that a clue?
You don't know of any other world. You only postulate it because you think it might be.
Isn't that a clue, though, that there's something outside us? Isn't rationality itself something outside us? Isn't it a clue that there's something outside us?
No, it's not. It's to be reconciled as, you might call it surplus value, I suppose. You'd say there were certain people who love others more than they need to just for human solidarity. I mean, they're not altruistic people.
Even as the large cranium that enables us to escape the tiger also enables Beethoven to compose piano sonatas. Yes. That's surplus value.
Yes, it is surplus value. And there are people who've always been celebrated, those who will live largely for the wider human family, or, if you like, the wider, make it smaller, the wider tribe. Some who don't. Those who do have always been honoured and respected, quite rightly, and there's no need to postulate anything supernatural about this. Mm. And since there's no evidence for anything supernatural, let alone any supernatural intervention in human affairs, I mean, none whatsoever of any kind, why make mysteries where none exist? We do have the spare capacity in our cranial wiring to care for other people in the hope that they will reciprocate, or maybe even without that hope. And when I give blood, say, which I don't do often enough, I get a positive pleasure out of doing it. I like doing it. I don't lose a pint. Mm-hmm. Somebody else gains one. Mm-hmm. That thought is very agreeable to me. I like it. I actually enjoy doing it. I could add that I have a very rare blood group myself, and I may one day need a transfusion in my turn, and I hope other people have been doing it for me. But actually, no, it's not just for that reason, not just reciprocal. It's now the idea that I need a supernatural prompting to think this way is no, you clearly I'm sorry, I think is a barbaric idea.
Question here, the purely utilitarian argument. By calling insulting reviewers who ask where you get your morals, you also deplored the, quote, the self-satisfaction that simply assumes whether or not religion is metaphysically true, that at least it stands for morality. But I'm not sure that argument is all that contemptible, as witnessed two pieces of evidence. George Washington, quote, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to the prosperity of a nation, religion is the indispensable support. It tends to lend itself toward a healthy polity. And the second is a kind of counterexample, which is the history of the 20th century, during which you have the communist regimes, that is to say, the regimes that were officially and aggressively atheist, caused the deaths of, you name the number, Bob Conquest, I think, is about 60 million, isn't it? 60 million of their own people, which dwarfs any number that the Crusaders may have slain in the 12th century.
Well, I have a whole chapter about this in my book.
All right.
And partly because I do think it's a very serious question. And I put it like this. First, the regimes of fascism and National Socialism, the so-called Axis powers, who would be up in the same class of figures of mass murder, were, in the case of the Mussolini-Franco forces, effectively nothing more than the right wing of the Roman Catholic Church. That you'll have to admit, the Church has itself had to admit, that whether it's Croatia, the Ustasha, Hungary, the Arrow Cross.
Croatia, I'm not less willing. But
it's effectively, it's movement, fascism movement of the Catholic right. National Socialism is pagan and in some ways anti-clerical.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Okay.
Pagan and in some ways anti-clerical, but it never breaks its concordat with the Church.
Right.
The Church reciprocates by having prayers by the order of the Vatican for Hitler's birthday every year till the very end, and then by rescuing, even after the National Socialist regime, the Nazi regime is at an end, helping its wanted people to escape to other clerical fascist dictatorships in South America. This has all been attested many, many times and apologized for by the Church, though I think not enough, to say nothing of the preachments down the years of anti-Semitism by the country. Mm-hmm. And the third leader of the Axis, the Japanese emperor, is actually a god, to whom everyone knows. No one in Japan thought you could possibly have morality if you didn't agree that Hirohito was God. Where would morality come from? If we didn't have the emperor, we wouldn't know what to do. People would be screwing in the streets. That's where it gets you. Well, now, Stalinism, because I'm not ducking your question.
All right.
Okay, until 1917, millions of Russians have been told for millions of years, millions of Russians have been told for hundreds of years, that the Tsar is the head of the church, which he was, of the Russian Orthodox Church, that the leader of the country should be something a little more than human. He's not a god, but he's a little more than, he's not quite divine, he's a holy father. If you're Joseph Stalin, you shouldn't be in the dictatorship business if you don't know how to exploit an inheritance like that of millions of credulous, servile people. And what does he do? Lysenko's biology, miracles. We can have 3 harvests a year if we believe in Lysenko's biology. Inquisition, heresy hunt, orthodoxy. Everything comes from the top and must be thanked for and groveled for. A complete replication of the preceding theocracy. For your argument to have any force at all, you'd have to point to a society that adopted the teachings of Lucretius, Spinoza, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Albert Einstein, and then fell into famine, dictatorship, torture, and genocide. And you won't, I think, be able to point to such.
You
surely.
surely.
That's what you'd need for a level playing
That's
field.
that's slippery work. You should feel a pang now, I think. You're not going to say that what Stalin did to the peasants in Ukraine was the fault of the Russian Orthodox Church.
Well, the Russian Orthodox Church always was on his side.
It may have.
The Ukrainian Orthodox wouldn't have been at that point, but the Russian Orthodox Church, as you know, split because the hierarchy stayed with his regime, as it does with all such regimes, because we have to render unto Caesar.
You truly wish to blame the crimes of Joseph Stalin on Christianity?
No, that would be slippery. No, I was very careful to say. Stalin is gifted a legacy of backwardness, servility, and credulity inculcated by Christianity, and he replicates the conditions of a political theocracy, and he keeps the church in his corner all throughout the war and throughout the collectivization. Look it up. The church had to split on the question. Those who didn't like it had to leave for America. And the religious mentality is very clearly shown in the totalitarian mass movements of leader worship and the Führerprinzip, and their heresy hunts and proclamations of miracles. Yes, it's an allotropic form of the same thing. So if you want a society that is secular to be judged, you have to have one that is derived from the work of Lucretius, Galileo, Spinoza, Einstein, and the rest.
Percy Bysshe Shelley, 1792 to 1822. Sent down from Oxford for publishing a pamphlet entitled The Necessity of Atheism.
Yes.
Anti-monarchist. This is clear in a writing called Poetical Essay on the Existing State of Things, which was lost until 2006. Anti-monarchical tract. A proponent of what we would now call sexual liberation. Your kind of guy. All right. Listen to this. This is from a poem published after Shelley's death, dated about 6 months before his drowning. So it's dated June 1822. This low sphere and all that it contains not thee, thou whom seen nowhere I feel everywhere. In music and the sweet unconscious tone of animals and voices which are human, meant to express some feelings of their own, in the soft motions and rare smile of woman, in flowers and leaves and in the grass fresh shown, or dying in the autumn, I the most adore thee present, or lament thee lost. Shelley, of all people, experiences deep intimations of the divine. What does Christopher Hitchens do with that fact?
The common mistake, perhaps the commonest made by, if you like, your side about mine, is that once we've said we were materialists, we've declared ourselves to be arid, pitiless, no sense of the numinous or the transcendent. This is something I think we could do another show on whether or not the natural world is wonderful enough, on the beauties of science, on the landscape and so on.
Are you saying that Shelley is simply mistaken here, that he's responding to something that doesn't exist? That is your point, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, of course, yes. But I mean, people do this all the time.
All right.
The belief that there is a transcendent, that it's divine, that it can be identified, worshipped, and celebrated is a very, very common delusion, and not only among poets.
All right. So Shelley doesn't shake you.
No, it would take a lot more than Shelley to shake me.
Oh, would it?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought Shelley was precisely the kind of man to shake you.
Shelley's politics and his romanticism don't, in fact, politically appeal to me very much.
Oh, they don't?
No,
I thought I had you. I thought Shelley was just the man.
I think his writings on atheism are excellent and much better than that, I thought, rather indifferent poem.
I didn't do justice to the poem, by the way. You have to read the whole thing.
Right, but it doesn't seem to me in the same rank as his other poetry, for a fact.
All right.
Notice, by the way,
yes?
how many poets write, as when poet laureates in England get the job from the Queen, as soon as they become the monarch's poet, they cease to write well. They just don't do it. Religion often has the effect of making very intelligent, very sensitive people talk the most terrible piffle.
Oh, Hopkins?
Oh, particularly Hopkins.
Oh, Oh, no.
Not George Herbert and not John Donne, I must admit.
But
I couldn't be without that. I don't like Hopkins at all. No.
Really?
And I also think that Auden's worst poetry comes after his reconversion to Anglicanism, as it happens. Auden's best poetry is all from his secular period.
God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens, for whom I shall be lighting a candle tomorrow. I'm Peter Robinson. This is Uncommon Knowledge. Thank you for joining us.